A warm welcome to everybody joining us on our Ekahau webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about all things Wi-Fi site surveys, including best practices, and we're going to be sharing lots of tips and tricks to allow you to collect accurate survey data. And I actually think this is going to be one of my favorite webinars. When you see all of the content that we've put together for this, I think you're going to find it extremely valuable and useful. So Troy, why don't we do a quick round of introductions and then get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So no surprise, we have Matt Starling, Senior Director of all things product marketing and ECSE. We have Stu Gumans, our token Canadian, still back in the home country, representing customer and community engagement. Dale Tyler joining us with that fantastic wood background, representing for us as well. And of course, myself, Troy Martin, here on the call. Now, to give you just an overview of what we'll be talking about today, we're going to talk about how to walk, which survey methods to use, when they're appropriate, when they might not be. And I liken this to how to walk and how to click at the same time. And I let my son actually flip through these slides, and he's like, "Why did you write chew bubble gum beside this?" And I'm like, "Have you never heard the expression walk and chew gum at the same time?" So I don't know if it's just a generational thing, but it was lost on him. Maybe some of you will get that reference. We'll also talk about new ways that you can gather attenuation measurements, feed that into your predictive designs, have a discussion about AP on a stick, best practices, how you can set that up, configure your gear to make sure you collect all the data that you require on site. We'll wrap up with some pointers on when and where to run those speed tests and how to get that running in your survey app so that you can capture those data points for performance measurements, as well as we don't want to ignore security. We'll also round off the whole discussion about surveying and collecting the data by walking you through how rogue APs are presented in the software, and you can analyze if they're a security threat for your organization.
So, not that long ago, when I was doing professional services as a Wi-Fi surveyor or engineer, I would always get a message from the sales team like, "Hey Matt, can you come and do a survey for me for this customer?" And I'd be like, "Sure, yeah, of course. I love doing Wi-Fi surveys, but what Wi-Fi survey am I going to be doing? Because there's quite a few different types of surveys. Am I doing a Wi-Fi survey to help me with my design for my predictive modeling? Am I doing a Wi-Fi survey to validate someone else's design? Am I going on site to do a periodic check to see if anything's changed, any improvements we can make? Or am I going on site because something is just completely broken and there's a lot of issues and I need to do a troubleshooting and assessment survey?" So when someone asks you, "Okay, Troy, Stu, Dale, can you come and do a Wi-Fi survey?" Always ask them, what is the, or have this question in your head, that what is the purpose of me going there? What is the reason why I'm collecting this data? Is it to inform my design? Is it to validate something else? So yeah, making sure that you understand exactly what type of survey you're going to be doing is really important. And then another question that we always get asked a lot, Troy, that I think maybe you're going to answer now is, should you do a passive or should you do an active Wi-Fi survey?
Yeah, so I think it's important to address this and highlight the differences between these two surveys. So at a very high level, you can perform either a passive site survey or you could additionally do an active site survey. And so what's happening behind the scenes is during a passive site survey, it's a listen only survey. It's completely passive. Your measurement device is not transmitting or injecting any traffic into the airwaves, and you're listening for information that's revealed in frames like beacons or probe requests, those type of frames, and you gather a bulk of the information that you need to really understand and analyze the performance of your Wi-Fi network. So these metrics include things like signal strength, so primary, secondary, tertiary coverage. You can measure the noise floor, identify the data rates, the min rates, the max rates, which ones are set to basic and mandatory, the number of SSIDs that are in the airwaves, and how they're configured from a security perspective. Now, all those passive measurements in Ekahau's world are captured from the wireless NICs and the spectrum analyzer integrated into your Sidekick 2. Right, so that's the device that's capturing all those measurements. In addition to that passive survey, which always must be done, you always have to do a passive survey, but you additionally have the option of also performing an active site survey. And during an active survey, that's where traffic is actually injected into the airwaves. Right, you're actually transmitting traffic, which means you need to connect your wireless network to the WLAN that you're interested in testing. So if there's a Capital Portal page or security keys or 82.1x authentication that you need to go through, you need to actually connect that device to the network, get an IP address, and able to push traffic. Right now, depending if you use AI Pro as on your laptop, there you can run tests where you generate iPerf tests and packet blast to measure things like throughput, jitter, and latency. You also have the ability to customize your ping destination if you wanted to send ICMP traffic, or if you're a fan of surveying with the survey app on your iOS or Android device, that software by default will always ping the default IP address of the network that you're in, so your default gateway, and you'll always be gathering that in the background if you're associated and connected to the wireless network while you're performing your survey. So just to recap quickly, passive survey is what I do 90% of the time. The reason I don't do an active survey is because I wasn't able to convince my own customers that it wasn't absolutely necessary. And I would typically charge them 5 to 8 times more to perform an active survey, because to perform that correctly, it's a lot more walking on site, and I burn through my sneakers, right? So you get the majority of your data through the passive surveys, option of also doing active, but I typically do not end up doing an active survey because I rely predominantly, again, on the passive survey to collect all that data. But the passive survey, again, it's data collected by the Sidekick, the wireless NICs, and the spectrum analyzer. Active survey, it's by the Wi-Fi NIC of the device you're testing with. So the Wi-Fi NIC internal to your smartphone, your iPad, or even your laptop.
So a quick question that came in on this, what is what is being pinged? So by default, we ping the default gateway. However, you can configure that to be something else if ping to the default gateway has been blocked, if you want to go to Google or something else as well. But I want to talk about
Absolutely.
collaboration, because I don't know if you have ever been a part of surveying a huge project. So give you an example here. Not that long ago, we was tasked with surveying a 1 million square foot warehouse. If you was to look at this floor plan and think, oh gosh, I've got to survey this all by myself, and probably walk it more than one time to collect the data and then go back, take some pictures, make some notes, etc., etc., that can be quite a daunting task. However, with Ekahau, you can actually collaborate, so share a project with a peer who also has an Ekahau license to share the load of surveying such a large project. So a few ways that you can do that. In the Ekahau Cloud, you can add people to the project there. So directly just add in the emails of the people that you want to work on the project with. You can also set up a sharing group. So if you're regularly working with the same people, you can set up a group, and then one click of a button just here, it will automatically share it with everybody in that group. You can also share via the desktop application. So we have a share button in the top left-hand corner, and you can add people to that project. And if you're wondering how many people can you add to a project, well, I'm not actually sure how many people you can definitely add, but recently we tried adding in quite a lot of people and it seemed to work okay. So you can share, and you can share different types of write access, so full access, edit rights, and view only, depending on what level of access you want to give to somebody. And also, really handy little tip is you can actually share with people from the survey application. So in the survey app, if you click on the little 3 dots next to the project details and sharing, you can also add people there. So if you just gone on site with your iPad and your Sidekick, you can still add people to the project there.
Now, before you start your survey, you want to make sure that everything's configured correctly, so that it's all working for you. Right? And part of that involves selecting the right channels, right? So you can do this in the survey app that you if you're surveying from the survey app on your mobile device. But the key here is making sure that you go into the iOS settings. So under general, region, and defining your region, and then the survey app inherits the country that you've selected, and then defines and limits what channels you're scanning as you go through your survey. So there's a couple different approaches to performing or to identifying what channels you want to scan. You can select and scan all of the channels, so all 2.4, all 5, all 6 gigahertz, which is my recommended approach. With 4 Wi-Fi NICs built into your Sidekick 2, you can quickly scan through all those channels as you're walking around or even driving, as we'll get into later, and you still collect a tremendous amount of data. But potentially in an AP on a stick survey, you may want to lock into just those specific channels you're scanning. Now, if we flip to the desktop version of AI Pro, within the software, AI Pro running on your Windows machine or your Macintosh, your Mac computer, you can define the region or the country code settings that you want within the software. Now, it's a good practice to select the country that you're defining for or that you're working on your project with, because that'll limit what channels get automatically assigned as you run the channel wizard, that kind of thing. But as a little tip, one thing that I like to do is I like to set my region to be other, which gives me access to all the channels globally supported on our planet. Right now, me as the designer, I have to then know the onus is on me to know which channels I can't use as part of my design. But particularly when I'm doing a survey, I like to scan all the channels, even the ones that may not be allowed in my country, because you never know if there be a nefarious actor that's deployed a rogue on that AP. And if I don't scan that channel, it may not be visible to me when I do my analysis.
Absolutely. So I just want to give you a few tips for helping you with accurate Wi-Fi site surveys. So the first thing is making sure you've scaled your floor plan accurately. A lot of people do use a door for distance for scaling. Actually, it's better to use a longer of a distance as possible. Use a laser measure or some other form of method to accurately scale your floor plan. We highly recommend you use an Ekahau Sidekick 2 measurement device. And the reason why we recommend the Sidekick 2 is because it is a calibrated device between devices. So that what we mean by that is if I do a survey with my Sidekick 2 or Troy or Stu or Dale or you watching this, you go and do a survey with your Sidekick 2, all of our data is going to be consistent and the same, and it's reliable to analyze that data to know what you're looking at. Surveying accurately, we have no guardrails to stop people from collecting bad data. So walking through things that they shouldn't or not going into places that they were supposed to go into and going on, like on point number four, walking on both sides of the walls that you care about. Because if you have bad data, it's going to give you bad results. So it's really important that you capture the data accurately and collect the data on both sides of the things that you care about. So if you want to know how much attenuation a wall is going to cause you, walk on both sides of it. And then finally, use the correct survey method for your environment. And we have five different options for you. So stop and go, continuous, autopilot, just go, and GPS. And rather than explain them and going into each one on this slide, we're actually going to break it down and go into each and every single one and give you some tips on how to use each method appropriately and to get the best out of it. So first of all, Troy, why don't we start with stop and go?
So stop and go is pretty much the entry level method that I would describe. It's the ones that it's the simplest for new users or new people entering the survey world or using the software to wrap their heads around. You literally just load your floor plans, walk out to that position on the floor, and you click and tap on the screen where you're standing. When you're using the survey app, the little bubble pops up on the screen with a little countdown timer telling you that you need to stand still in that 5 seconds. Now, if you've ever surveyed in schools and you had the experience of walking into a classroom, when you walk into that room, the entire class stops and all those students, their eyes are looking at you like you're one of the most impressive people they'll probably meet that day. And you want to be in a position where you're encouraging the next generation of Wi-Fi people to get excited about Wi-Fi. So while you're standing in that one location with all those eyes looking at you, I think it's important to look around like you're making important observations of how the access points are mounted or where there's additional jacks or things that you could plug in while you're waiting for that 5 second countdown to tick down. Once that's ticked down to 0, you move to your next location and just repeat that process, tapping on that spot where you're on the screen, standing still for that 5 seconds, letting the data get collected. Right. So some tips to make sure that you're making effective use of stop and go. We have a lot of other survey methods, which we'll dive into, but stop and go is very beneficial for those dangerous or hazardous environments. I've been in some manufacturing plants, and whenever they come up with rules like this, it's typically to react to an incident. They had a rule that you could not look at a electronic device like a tablet and interface with the screen at the same time, or walk rather. You could not walk at the same time as you were looking at a screen, because they had an incident where one of the metal arms swung around and someone got injured because they lost their arm. They weren't paying attention to where they were going, right? So if you're in those environments where you cannot walk, while you're collecting the data. And that may be a situation where you want to do a stop and go survey. Or another example in schools, I've been in some classrooms that were so small that they littered the entire floor space with backpacks and jackets for the winter season, that there was not a spot that you could conveniently put your foot down without stepping on someone's backpack or item or personal devices. And in that case, I was not able to walk at a constant pace between positions that I would have normally clicked as I went around the corners of the room, for example. So I'd carefully navigate my way across the floor, get to a position far enough away, click stop and go, collect my data, and move on to the next location. Now, the cool thing with stop and go is you can mix and match that with our other survey techniques like continuous. So you can do both a continuous survey and a stop and go within the same floor plan, within the same project, right? So stop and go does have advantages in those kind of unique situations, but we would recommend that you pick one of the other survey methods like continuous or autopilot. So why don't we talk about those next?
Yeah, I don't know if I missed it or not, but I don't know if you mentioned this one, Troy, about the use case of doing the stop and go right
Oh,
underneath an
right.
AP
Yes.
location. Because
Yes.
yeah,
Uh,
so maybe you can just explain that quickly.
Yeah. So, as you know, some access points, if they're omnidirectional integrated access points, if you do a good site survey practice and walk all the way around the AP and do that full 360 circle, the software does a very good job of placing that AP accurately where it is. But if you're in a situation where perhaps they're using directional antennas, so the AP and the antenna may be in a very different spot from where you actually hear the strong signal covered, or you weren't able to walk the full circle of that access point, the software may not accurately position the AP on the floor plan for you. So what some people do is they'll leverage the green dots that are created by a stop and go survey, and they'll just do a stop and go to represent the location of an access point. So that's one way you can document and then later update the position of your APs. One thing that I like to do is I'm a big fan of taking pictures if I need to, if I only get one pass through a floor plan based on time of day access or rooms are in use. I may add a map note to that location, just document the AP location with a map note and bind a picture to that I can then cross-reference as I'm putting my project back together at the end.
Yeah, that was a really good tip. So I when I heard that, so I'm glad that we covered that today. So let's talk about continuous. So the continuous type of survey mode is basically when you're going to tap in a location of where you are, walk to the next location, and then when you turn, you would tap again, and then you'd walk, and then when you need to turn, tap, turn, tap, and then when you stop. But there's a few other things to think about when you're doing a continuous survey, because when you are walking and tapping, you should also think about when you have to change speed. So a really nice example is when you are walking up to, let's say maybe you've got to walk into a locked room and you've got the keys in your pocket. You walk up to the door, you click when you get to before the door, and then you get the key out of your pocket, you open the door, you open the handle, push it open, put the keys back in your pocket. Before you then start to walk into the room, you should tap on the location of where you are because you've been stood in the same spot and the data point's been buffering. You should tell the software that there, I've stood still for the last 5, 10 seconds, and then go and start your walk. Because otherwise, if you don't click and then you walk, it just spreads out those buffer points evenly across your data point, the last points where you've tapped, and you see these green data points along here. So this is clearly when you see when there's been like a bit of a change of pace, and you're collecting more and more data points in a small section. So that's one thing I think is a very good handy tip maybe to remember. So if you click when you start, you click when you turn, change pace, you click again in the same location before you start working, and then you click when you stop. So a few tips there for continuous, but Troy, when we are looking at server data, it is a bit interesting some of the things we see sometimes, isn't it?
It is absolutely right. So sometimes you just have your regular outfit out, right? Where you're just blending in with everybody. And some people, their regular outfits, they dress differently than others. No comments in particular on this. But once you've collected a lot of the data and you get into that zone where you can start analyzing it, that's where you get that sense where you can pull on your superpower. right? And start looking at different heat map visualizations, making sure that people collect the data properly so that when you do start analyzing it, whatever conclusion you draw from that data is actually based on legit sourced data. Now, this is a AI inspired picture, and don't ask me why I have blonde hair in this picture, but it changed the color there.
Uh, so what is it? What is it? What does a good quality survey look like, Troy?
So best practices are to walk everywhere on a floor plan, right? So walk in and out of every room. I like to make the traces of my walking path look a little bit more professional by walking in nice, clean, straight lines. I try not to wander or zigzag all over the place that I can, but it's very important that if you care about the coverage inside a room, that you measure both sides of the room to measure the impacts of the attenuation caused by whatever materials or objects that could be interfering with signals or changing the measurements that you make for signals in that room, right? So some people will cheat and say, hey, what if I just walk down a hallway, right? I'll measure the signal. And I've seen the software where it kind of guesses or extrapolates what the signal coverage is like that. And that's true, the software does that, right? But it's like working with an arm tied behind your back, right? All we can measure and extrapolate is signals that we've heard. The software doesn't inherently know that there's a wall. Sure, we could, leverage the power of AI, interpret the presence of walls from those diagrams, but the floor plan itself may not be accurate. Those walls may have been removed, the doors may have been opened, the firewall doors in the hallways may not be closed at a particular moment. So it's very important that you walk into those rooms. Also super important that you're not taking shortcuts walking through walls, right? Some superheroes do have that ability where they can just plow through any wall. But if you're not actually walking through the walls, mark the trace on the floor plan following the path you're taking in and out of all the doors, around the furniture, around the beds, file cabinets, objects, desks, whatever that is. Make sure you're taking those correct paths. And most people, I haven't seen it yet, most people aren't equipped with the rocket packs or jet packs to survey. And so if you're surveying the fourth floor of a building, there's a good chance that you're not flying outside the building, cutting across one section to the other, right? So if you're not literally using a jetpack to hop between decks, you don't want to click and mark a survey path as if you were walking outside of the wall for your building. Right. And these are common examples of things that immediately obvious that someone's clicked or made a mistake while surveying. But a more practical example is something that Matt's going to walk us through here.
Yeah, so this is some survey data collected of our Helsinki office, and what I would say is when it comes to collecting data, it's really important that we collect the data accurately because we at Ekahau, not yet anyway, we have a way to safeguard to look at this and go, oh, you know what, clearly this survey data isn't good, right? We've had people fly out of the window and then come back in. They've taken a shortcut through an office into the stock room, walked through lots and lots of walls and come back in through this. Like we are relying on you as the person capturing the data to capture accurate data. Because now, if you, I mean, obviously, I mean, what the heck happened over here, right? If you look at the actual data that this now provides you, like when you see the heat maps, but do you feel like you can trust or rely on this data that is being represented to you because you see access points and positions? But I can tell you for sure now, these are not the AP locations in the office. I'm sure the hundreds or thousands of you watching this to now know where the AP locations are for the Helsinki office because we've shown it once or twice before. And you can see that the heat maps, right? It's not right. It's not accurate compared to what it should look like. So this is a survey that we collected doing a continuous survey, walking into the rooms, collecting data accurately. And if you just compare that to what we can see here, we can see APs in their correct locations. You look at the heat maps, they look like what you're expecting to see. Now, this is data that we can analyze, we can act upon, we can optimize, we can use to redesign. Whereas when you compare side by side, Troy, right, it's not great, is it? Um, you put yourself on mute because I think because of the background noise, but we need you to
Oh,
come off
yes.
mute.
Sorry, guys. One of the things that we notice is with the software is that it's developing or recreating, drawing that heat map for you based on the data that was collected at the spot that you indicated where it was collected. So if you're not clicking accurately, when it starts assembling that heat map, if you're in a different position, it'll redraw the heat map to represent something that doesn't match reality, right? Also, based on the positions where you're clicking, it can update the AP positions into the wrong locations. Right. And so some people really like to put a lot of weight into the APs where they are, the dots on the map, and go, well, that's clearly the problem because the AP is in the wrong room. That's why we need to fix things. Right. So you want to be mindful of putting the APs in the right spots. Whereas if you were to follow best practices, like Matt outlined, then the software will automatically place APs within inches or centimeters of where the access points are actually positioned. And this saves you a lot of work on the back end, updating those AP positions. When you generate a report and you share that with a project manager, your end customer or client, and they can see that those APs are in the correct positions, that for the humans in the audience there that don't think as quite as technical, that gives them a warm fuzzy that the data collected is accurate because the AP positions are also accurate with that. And then they'll believe more the heat maps that they're looking at and the story that you're telling them that's, hey, when they invest this money in this project, these are the correct AP locations to place those access points. Or when you give them recommendations to optimize their Wi-Fi network, that they can believe that you made the recommendations based on good, solid data. And so I'm sure many of us have, we talked about the expression earlier, walk and chew bubblegum. You've probably heard the expression garbage in, garbage out. And really that's at the core of this issue, right? If we're not collecting good data to analyze, can any of the recommendations or conclusions we make, can they really be valid? Right. So we really want to emphasize good quality data collection as a cornerstone to delivering good survey results.
Yeah. Hey, Stu, Dale, I can see there's quite a lot of questions in the Q&A. Maybe we can answer a couple now quickly live, and then we'll save the rest for at the end, towards the end of the webinar. So was there a couple you wanted to quickly throw over?
Yeah, I got one here that kind of follows back a couple slides. Is what is the recommended amount of collection points when using stop and go surveying, large area
That's
versus an office?
Yeah, great question. We actually have some slides later on that's going to show that for you about like the distance you should have between your survey paths. But to answer at a very high level now, effectively what we do is when you collect a data point, we extrapolate in a 3 meter radius from that data point. So as long as there's no more than a 6 meter radius gap between your data points collected on the survey path, you'll never see a gap in your coverage. So it will really depend on the size of your building. But what is nice in the survey app is when you're clicking, it draws a blue circle around your survey path, so you can see if you're effectively painting enough of your floor plan to capture to show the heat map that you want to see. So it will really depend on your environment, but as long as you keep a distance of less than 6 meters between your survey collection paths and points, you won't see a gap in your coverage. So thank you for that, Stu. I'll let Dale throw one over to Troy quickly, and then we'll continue on with some of our other survey methods.
Yeah, so here's another question. I actually was asked this earlier today, before the webinar. But can you talk about some of the best practices when you're in an office location that has doors, as far as having the doors open, closed while you're surveying, what approach to take when it comes to that?
Yeah, so I find generally the most challenging RF scenario is when the doors are shut. Now, it varies a lot on the office. Some have very thin doors, others are very solid wood, very thick doors. So a lot of legal accounting offices, especially as you go up to more of the executive floors, it's like the more valuable they are to the company, the thicker their door is. The worst Wi-Fi scenario is with that door closed. So my preference is, as I'm doing that survey, I'll walk up to the door, and as Matt talked about earlier, I might have to scan my badge to get in that door, or slide it open, or use keys to get in that door. I just click and pause where I'm standing. I haven't ended my continuous survey path. I've just clicked because I stopped walking. Once that door is open, I take one step into that room, click again because I'm about to stop, and wait for the door to close behind me. So I let it close or I slide it, whatever the office scenario is like. Once that door is closed, then I'll walk around to where the chair is and the desk, and I'll stand there kind of pausing again for about 5 seconds. So again, throughout the entire continuous survey, I haven't ended that survey. I've just made longer pauses just to give more time to collect that data. And I want to make sure I try collect it when that door is closed, because that's generally the more difficult or more restricted RF condition, right? Once I've collected that data, I then walk back out the door and repeat that process, just pausing as I open the door, pausing as I leave the office, and then just rinse and repeat that as I move in and out of office. So directly to answer the question, I'd recommend surveying office environments with the door closed. Now, it does take longer, and you do need to account for that for time on site so that you can open the close the door. sometimes working in pairs, you can have one person kind of pre-open doors for you and close it as you walk in, which can save some time, but it does require then two bodies on site to make that work.
Thanks, Troy.
Perfect. All right. So let's talk Autopilot, one of my favorite survey data collection methods, because it's now going to leverage the technology of your device to automatically track your survey path for you. So a few tips here for when you are going to be doing a Autopilot survey. So you effectively need to give it a calibration initially to set where you are, and then to set the next location, and then your path will automatically update for you. And a tip here, and I'm going to admit that I used to make this mistake, is when you first tap your initial calibration point, the software actually says, hold on, I'm getting ready to calibrate your location before you start walking. And then you should start walking. What I used to do is I would tap and then start walking and then wonder why my path wouldn't be super accurate. So a tip here is tap, wait a second, then it'll tell you, woohoo, get ready. I'm ready to start recording your next location, and then walk to a known reference point. So here we're using two pillars because they are definitely physically there, rather than stuff like furniture that can be temporarily moved around that's not definitely there. So use as long of a distance point as you can, and use something that is definitely there, like the two pillars. And then what you'll see is we're not doing any magic in post-production or anything here. You can see Mac is just walking around with his phone doing an autopilot survey, holding it like normal, not pointing it in a crazy different way, just holding it like you would normally walk around with your phone, doing a survey like you're doing like you would normally just walk around, going around the desk, going into the rooms that you care about, and collecting that data. But sometimes the survey path does vary off, and what you can see here is that it had actually put him on the door and before he had got there. So what you can actually do is you can correct the survey path by re-tapping on the map, and you'll see it changes his position in a second. So it's it's in the wrong position, puts it into the right position, and then continues to survey. And then when you look at the results of the autopilot survey, you can see walked around, gone into all of the rooms like we supposed to. And then you can see the details of the heat maps. Everything is looking nice and good. So it's a really nice way to be able to collect survey data, especially if you're doing it on your phone. Very mobile, very easy to open and close doors, very easy to be aware of your surroundings. And a few tips, like I said earlier, hold your phone like normal. Don't cover the camera or point it towards the floor. Scaling is really important here. If your scale is off, we found that your autopilot survey path tracking can be a bit skewed. And also the first calibration point is really important. Using something that's definitely there, wait a second, then go to pillars or windows or doors or whatever you can actually definitely know there's going to be there. And also, like, don't forget, sometimes if your path does start to drift, you can correct it. So that was some tips on autopilot. And then moving on to definitely my favorite type of survey mode, Troy, just go. Um, how long should we
Did it again.
yeah.
Just in the environment I'm in, they're just breaking for lunch, so there's a lot of noise here. So I do
I'm glad
apologize
that
about that. If
people
it
I'm glad that people aren't coming out of the conference to photobomb you during the webinar. I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that'd be quite tempted to do that.
poke their heads out. So Just Go Survey is one of my favorite survey methods, right? But it does have very specific scenarios in which it really shines. But the idea here is that if you do not have a floor plan for whatever reason, there's a last minute project that was opened up where you got sent to site to go measure some data. Or you've been working with the customer and for weeks and weeks or even months, they keep claiming that they're not able to provide the floor plans, right? Or you go to a site and the floor plans that were provided are wildly different than what the actual building's laid out as, right? So if situations like that arise, those are good candidates for where you might want to use Just Go Survey. And the idea here is that you can walk around, and while you're pointing your phone, it's also capturing and identifying where walls and objects are, where the ceiling is, where the wall meets the floor, and it's creating a floor plan for you on the fly. Now, the cool thing is, it's my belief that this is the most accurate survey method, because all the data, which is continuously being collected in the background, all the passive data measurements, it's all positioned based on your relative distance from a wall that you're detecting and analyzing, right? So the accuracy of clicking on the maps, I think, is hyper accurate in this Just Go scenario. And then you get a cool benefit of having the floor plan drawn for you as you walk around, and you can see that in the lower third of your screen. Now, to start the Just Go survey, you'd walk through the workflow as if you're creating a floor plan. add the floor plan and get the option to integrate it as a Just Go survey and start that off. What you're seeing in the slides here is just a comparison that if you had the benefit of floor plans, that would be my preference to survey with that. If I had the floor plans, I would load that, scale it, do my continuous survey, maybe my autopilot survey. But if I don't have floor plans and I need to build that on the fly, this is what the result is of doing an autopilot survey or a Just Go survey, what it looks like, right? So you get this definite sense of where the rooms are, where the offices are, maybe even some pillars or attenuation objects. You can definitely translate that into something meaningful. But it's certainly a time saver if you did not have a copy of the floor plans versus building your own and using one of those devices with a laser distance measurer and drawing lines on PowerPoint or some other image drawing application and loading that, or making your own Excel version of a floor plan. That would be a little silly at this point, because we have the Just Go survey that can deliver quite quickly on what you need to gather data and then correlate that to position on a floor plan.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Roy. And also, I just saw someone in the chat saying, does Just Go work on multiple different floor plan layouts? So obviously these are two different offices we've shown you here, but what I love, and if you're watching this webinar, feel free, you can do this too, is people send us their Just Go survey results because they're so blown away with what they see. So here is an example of a friend of ours sent us a Just Go survey that they did of a warehouse. So they turned up to the warehouse manager didn't have the floor plans, and the Wi-Fi surveyor there had a choice of doing a survey using a Just Go or not doing a survey at all. And this is absolutely better than nothing, right? So now you can see the survey paths that were collected. You see the APs and the locations. You can see there's issues with coverage, primary and secondary. But also you can analyze the data and see, yeah, we've got issues with channel interference. So here, they would benefit from a new channel plan and maybe making some adjustments in the controller. But also, if we drill down over here, we can actually see that there was an interferer causing interference on 5 gigahertz and actually taking up a few of the available channels on 5 gigahertz. So they were wondering, why were some of the access point radios not using some of the channels on 5 gigahertz? Or doing a Just Go survey in a warehouse revealed an interferer that they was able to go and track down, go and locate, remove, reconfigure it, and actually improve the performance of the network. And if I think back to when this was happening to me before and I would have no options, this is such a amazing option to have as a additional resource in your arsenal. So a few tips for when you're doing a Just Go survey. It does require you to have an iOS device that has the LiDAR scanner. So when you're looking at the phone, it's typically you'll see this extra little circle here. So phone or tablet that has the LiDAR scanner. It's basically any of the pro versions that you would need for that. One other thing that we found, which I think Stu, you told me this tip, is if you've got a transparent case on your iOS device, remove that because that can actually affect the light bouncing back and forwards from the LiDAR scanner. How you would survey is just walk around like you're doing an autopilot survey, going on both sides of what you care about. But it is really important that you do one area at a time and don't try and come back on yourself too much, because that can confuse the software when you're rewalking the same location multiple times. And you need to do a complete walk of the floor at once. So you can't yet stop and start your survey and continue it. So you need to walk the whole floor at once. So plan that accordingly. And yeah, try out Just Go if you haven't already. And feel free to share your results with us. I love seeing the data. But there is also another survey mode that we have, Troy, right?
Yeah, I always find it weird when I do a Just Go survey, because when you're walking around, people see your screen like it's shooting a video or recording a movie, and it makes people a little paranoid as you walk in and out of people's office. Now, the software is not recording a movie; it's just capturing the walls and the data and stuff. But it is a little weird from the people hanging out the office when you're walking around doing a Just Go survey. But if you're outside, that's where we also have another option to perform a GPS survey. Now, not a lot of people or a lot of Ekahau users of the software require surveys to be done outside, but when you do, this is a very powerful feature, right? So the use cases for this are, on a campus where you need Wi-Fi coverage in between buildings, where there may be an open park area. People, in the summer, the nice warm weather, the students, they're sitting outside. There may be streets and downtown areas where they've blocked cars from driving down. So a lot of people will walk and stroll up and down the streets. They'll sit there, have their lunch, drink a coffee. You may need Wi-Fi on a golf course, right? So at the various different holes as you're walking around, right? Or even in more harsher industrial environments like open pit mines, right? So whether it's a copper mine, sand or oil mine, something like this, that's where you need massive coverage areas to be surveyed. And performing a GPS survey is much better than using, stop and go, continuous, or even just go survey, something like that, right? So GPS surveys, they leverage the GPS chips built into your devices. So one of the requirements is to perform the survey itself. Your device, whether it's an iPhone or an iPad, it needs to be the cellular capable version of that hardware, right? So the Wi-Fi only version will not work because we need the proper GPS chip in your mobile device. The Wi-Fi only is it's assisted GPS. So basically it's faking it and it's just not accurate enough. Now, to create the initial floor plan and get that loaded, you can create the floor plan and load that on any mobile device, right? Whether it's Wi-Fi only or the SIM capable devices. We do integrate with Apple Maps. So you can load the floor plan in directly from Apple Maps. I like to flip to the satellite image to grab that in so I get more detail of the ground instead of just the conceptual overlay. The benefit of pulling in the Apple Maps image is that you do have the ability where it automatically pulls in the GPS positions, right? So it can align the floor plan for you. So when you collect the data, it knows where to position it. You do have an option where you could load floor plans like an image, something from Google Earth or Google Maps, something like that. You can load that image in, and then you can manually define GPS alignment points as well. So that's also a supported option. But once that floor plan is created to perform that survey, it needs to be done on the SIM capable or cellular capable device. Now, one important distinction, you do not need a monthly plan or even a SIM card loaded. You just need the hardware that's capable of it, right? So you just need to buy your iOS device. You don't need to buy a monthly cellular plan to go with it. Right, so you can walk around, do your surveys. And the great thing about this is that basically the software is essentially self-clicking on the map for you very, very rapidly. So it doesn't really matter. We don't see a big impact to your results, whether you're walking outside on a golf course or driving your golf cart around the golf course, or if you're driving an F-350 through a mine, trying to get run over by one of those 400-ton haulage trucks, right? The data will accurately be collected. But one key thing is the iOS device that you're using, hold it or position it at a constant position. So set it flat on a table or hold it at a consistent angle in your hands. Avoid walking around or flipping it, on its side, that kind of thing, because that kind of distorts the GPS position that you're getting. We are limited to the accuracy of the GPS detection from that mobile device. And I have seen downtown locations very similar to what you see in the image on the screen, that if there's too many very tall buildings around you, we're not able to get a GPS lock, right? So it's not a problem with GPS in the survey app. If you were to walk around on Apple Maps, your little blue dot would be bouncing around just because GPS lock itself is very difficult. But in a lot of open areas, golf courses, mines, forests, parks, campus environments, doing GPS surveys are a fantastic option for a survey method that you could use. If you didn't want to go down the GPS path and you had good reference points, you could always perform a continuous survey as long as you had like a light post in a parking lot or a tree or the end of a field that you could line up on your image. You could use continuous survey to mark those positions. Or if you want to just drive around and not be on your phone while you're driving, be compliant with legal requirements, GPS surveys is an option you have in your tool belt.
Hello, Stu.
Hey, one thing to add from GPS, because yes, I have been known to plant my Sidekick in the back of a pickup truck and drive it around the neighborhood, is to, with varying GPS phones and iPads, it's important to remember that not all of them are created equally, and to sometimes give it a second to sync. Because what I mean by that is, as soon as I turn on the GPS and before I start the survey, as Troy was mentioning, let that blue dot settle in to where you are and then start going, because it needs to just make sure that it knows where you are and then hit the start the survey. That'll help actually guide you a little bit better. And sometimes if the map is a little bit tilted, if you are going to use that tilt like a map, you want to make sure that it's flat down, because sometimes it may not understand the elevation change of whatnot. So you have to just to kind of take that into consideration.
Great tips. Thank you, Stu. So I'm going to flip through these slides quite quickly because we kind of answered it with the question that came from the chat about the distance you should keep between your survey path. So when you look at a survey path, you'll see these little points on your survey path. These are the data points that we've collected. We then extrapolate the data from a 3-meter radius collected from this point. So as long as you keep your survey paths within a 6-meter radius of each other, you won't see any gaps in your coverage. And then another question we get is, well, what if you can't survey everywhere? You know, sometimes you're doing challenging environments like hotels, hospitals, or offices, and you can't get into every room. It's normal that you can't get into every room. I would say that the recommendation would be is to try and at least access a minimum of 70% of each floor that you're going to be performing the survey of, but also really take the time to plan ahead, communicate, arrange access for times before, after, or during when it's going to be the best time to achieve the collection of the survey data. Example here, we was at a hotel very recently, and sometimes you might think, oh, doing a survey before or after hours is going to be a good time to collect the survey data. That's not the case for hotels. The best time to collect survey data is actually between checkout and check-in time, where you can run around and get access and you can plan ahead. So just to recap, a minimum of 70% of the floor plan is what I would recommend, and plan ahead of time. And sometimes even plans to come back at weird times to come and collect that survey data. Collecting the data is king, so we want to try and get as much as we can, and then you can leverage that to making more informed decisions. And now we're going to come on to AP on a stick, because I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of in the chat and Q&A about AP on a stick. So Troy, tell me about AP on a stick surveys.
Yes, absolutely. The thing I like to frame AP on a 6 surveys around is about risk mitigation, right? So ask yourselves, how expensive is it to move an access point once I deploy it if it happens to be in the wrong spot? And some environments, it's relatively low cost. If you think like an office space or a school, if I give guidance to leave an extra, 20 feet or, 5 or 10 meters of cable up in the ceiling, if I pop a ceiling tile, I can easily move an AP on the other side of that wall, and it's not super expensive. Other environments like manufacturing, healthcare facilities, warehouse environments, it may be very expensive to move that access point after the fact. And so if you want to reduce the cost to move that AP after the fact, that's where you may want to introduce an AP on the stick, where you validate every position that you plan on placing an access point and verify that you'll get the actual coverage that you're expecting from that position. And then you know with very high certainty that when I commit to installing an AP and drilling the holes in that wall or running the conduits out to this location, I know I'm not going to have to move that access point. Right. So that's one of the key considerations when thinking, do I need an AP on a stick or not, is how much is going to cost if I have to change things after the fact? How confident do I need to be in my solution when I present that to the end customer? Now, AP on a stick surveys are more expensive up front because you do have to go on site and you do have to bring a whole bunch of gear with you while you do that, right? So some of that gear is part of your kit that you may travel with you on site. If we just flip to the next screen, so you could have a different kit where you have a tripod or a mast. You may want to consider, am I planning for office space, which may have relatively low ceilings, or am I planning for a warehouse where I may need a tripod or a lift that can raise me up to 40 feet, several meters up in the air to make sure I can get that up there, because there's no point setting an AP on a stick at 12 foot or like a 3-meter height if they're actually going to be mounted 40 feet up in the air, right? Any signals that you measure will not reflect how to look when they're actually deployed, right? Other things that you want to think through are, do you have the right battery? Do you have the right power supply for your access point, right? So you can keep your AP powered up. One tip, try put your battery or any extra equipment down close to the floor, right? The less weight you can put at elevation, the more stable your tripod will be, and the less likely it is to tip over if someone accidentally bumps into it or knocks it over. Also gives you an easy way to reset your access points. If you need to, you can just unplug them very quickly. With respect to APs, now it depends on which manufacturer that you're rolling with, but most of them will support some sort of survey mode that you can flip your access point into. So sometimes it's just a simple configuration you can apply, or it's a a very specific mode that you need to enter or flip your radios into, where you can then configure them to act as standalone access points, advertise some APs, have the ability to customize the channel setting, which for AP on a sticks, it's a good idea to lock or statically assign the channels so that those radios are not channel hopping on you. Also, remember what channels you're using. One of my personal preferences is I like to pick channels in the middle of the band, right? So channel 6 on 2.4, one of the not channel 36, not necessarily channel 161 or 65, something more in the middle, and then something middle with 6 gigahertz as well. We also recommend configuring separate and unique SSID names for each band, right? So if you want to lock onto a band and stay onto that as you walk around and collect the measurements from your access point, that you stay connected on that band. Whereas if you walk at a range of 5 and 6 gigahertz, you may automatically flip to 2.4, but now you're measuring performance like throughput, round trip time, packet loss, latency. You're measuring that from a 2.4 perspective, where you may want to have only focused on 5 or 6 gigahertz, right? Now, during a passive survey, you'll still collect all the signal from all the bands all at the same time, but I think it's valuable to identify them via separate SSIDs to get good results as you do your AP on a stick survey and control the sources of data that you're collecting. Okay. Now, some people ask, how far should I walk when I'm doing AP on a stick survey? Right? How far apart from the access point do I need to go? So here we're showing 3 different SSIDs advertised on our different channels, right? One thing to be aware of, if you do pick a DFS related channel, that can impact some scanning time for client devices. If you were using that as part of your active survey, but if all that you're interested in is collecting beacons, they'll easily be sent out on a DFS channel. But you want to measure 2 thresholds, which is emphasized on this slide. One of the thresholds is the edge of the coverage that you're designing for in your wireless network, right? So it's very common to design for a primary coverage of NAICS 67 dBm. But if your particular design requires NAICS 65 or NAICS 62, or maybe you're designing for NAICS 72, whatever that demarc is for your boundary of primary coverage, you want to make sure you hit that boundary. So that's what that NAICS 67 in this image represents, is your primary coverage target. The second boundary, that neg 85, that represents the edge of your co-channel interference. So if there's another AP out there operating on the same channel, right, is it going to hear a neighboring AP and then defer so that only one of them talks at a given time? You're looking at your edge of co-channel interference, which we represent with the neg 85 dBm. Now, you may want to look specifically at the data sheets for the AP models that you're deploying to see how sensitive they are to signals from other access points. It may actually be a lot further than neg 85, but that's what that's representing. So we're measuring edge of our primary coverage and edge of co-channel interference, and you want to walk the full 360 around that AP to measure those boundaries. And if you're being very particular, you may also want to walk up and down floors vertically to find the edge of those thresholds as well. And that's why, AP on a stick surveys can take quite a bit longer and a lot more expensive when you're on site collecting all this data. But the benefit is when you decide to place an AP where it goes, you know exactly what that RF experience will be like, and you know that you'll be able to deliver on the design requirements that you're putting together for that solution.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. I tried to fix on the fly the channels to use that based on what you said. So
yes, I
sorry.
appreciate that.
Now, one of the amazing things that Ekahau being a part of Ookla is we can now integrate the Speedtest application not only into our analyzer app, but also into the survey application. So you can collect data points using the Speedtest icon in your survey application. So go to a location, hit Speedtest, and you can record where you are in an indoor location, or if you're doing one outdoors as well, and capture your actual real internet throughput speeds, the ping results, round trip time, packet loss, jitter, etc. And you can record that and then analyze the comeback later on. So yeah, this is a really nice and handy new feature, and it's going to be very important, especially if you've seen some of the announcements recently with Speedtest Certified, the new initiative that we've launched, being able to do this type of testing. But actually, we was on site a couple of weeks ago, and we were doing a Speedtest Certified initiative. running the speed test actually helped us uncover an issue on site. And and this is my apartment that you're seeing right now, so this is just for like illustrative purposes. But how we leveraged this to uncover an issue is we was getting very consistent speed test results as we was going through this venue. So we was consistently hitting around 200 meg up and down in most locations. And then we got to one area of the floor plan on one of the floors, and we ran a speed test, and then the speed test actually showed us the results where we was not getting more than 100 megs. We was getting up to just up to in and around 100 megabits per second. We're like, well, that's funny because everywhere else we've been running the speed test like consistently throughout the floor plans and the venue, we was getting, you know, closer to 200 meg everywhere. So it was a very unexpected kind of speed test result for us. Made us kind of like dig in a little bit deeper about what this potentially could have been. So we then had a look on the wireless controller, and what we'd actually noticed is that all of the access points were connected and negotiated their speeds at 1 gig, apart from one access point that had negotiated at 100 meg for its Ethernet port. And what that then meant is that we was not getting speeds higher than 100 meg because that is how it had negotiated. So bouncing the port of the switch that AP was connected to actually resolved that issue, and we was able to get the speed tests back to the same results we were getting consistently. So actually it was a really nice new way for us to, you know, uncover an issue that we could then get the speed back to as it should have been. So I really enjoyed that. And on the topic of Ookla, keep an eye out next week because there is a major announcement. So keep an eye on social media because there's going to be a very big announcement of all things to do with Ookla. But Troy, there is kind of almost like a bonus that you get when you perform a Wi-Fi site survey that can help you have a more secure network.
Absolutely. And we talked about this at the very beginning, and we're going to wrap up on security. While you're collecting all this data, you can also get visibility into what devices shouldn't be inside your walls, right? So if there's an access point or radio that's advertising a signal that's too strong, that may be, you know, violating your corporate procedure, or there's an employee that brought in an access point to try and make their job more efficient, or if there's nefarious actors that have snuck into your organization, we can detect and identify those for you. Right. So the way this works in Ekahau speak is a rogue AP is anybody that's not your SSID. Right. So this may be different than some of the rogue definitions that you've seen other places or via other organizations. So it's a different SSID. And if it's a signal louder than neg 55 dBm, those two conditions are what trips the classification of a rogue device present in your environment. Right. So at neg 55, there's a very good chance it's inside your walls. At neg 85, it might have been a neighbor across the street or someone, you know, a couple floors above you and below them. Right. But if it's in your building, that's where you want to take action and identify where that device is in your environment. Either decide, hey, it's allowed to be there. Let's make sure it's configured properly, or it's violating our corporate policy for security and posturing of devices, and we need to disable that. And that device is not allowed to be there. Right. So when all the rogue devices are identified, you can easily look at a heat map to identify where those rogue devices are, letting you know which offices, which employees you may need to have a go discussion with to identify what those devices are. You can get some insights into the manufacturer of that access points. So get a rough sense of what that AP model may look like, what color it could be to help identify if it's hanging from a wall, sitting on someone's desk, or maybe tucked inside to the drywall itself because someone's intentionally trying to hide the presence of that access point in your environment. Now, I'd be very concerned if someone's going through the effort of hiding it inside your drywalls and what data that they've been collecting from organization. But this is why it's key to perform regular site surveys so that you can discover new and unexpected rogue devices that are in your environment. And that's just talking about Wi-Fi capable devices. But in addition to that, you could have devices that generate non-Wi-Fi interference.
Yep, exactly. But I almost imagine like I kind of like say this to people when you go and do a Wi-Fi site survey and you're collecting data about your environment, you also are getting a security survey at the same time because you find out all of these different rogue devices or devices that shouldn't have their Wi-Fi enabled, printers, TVs, you name it, you can find them in your environment, I'm sure, but also non-Wi-Fi interference like we saw here. That because we have the integrated spectrum analyzer, this is what you'll be able to see. So yeah, very beneficial thing for doing Wi-Fi site surveys. And just on the topic of doing site surveys, I'm not sure if everyone on the webinar today is aware that you can actually save your files locally to the hard drive of the Sidekick. So how you can do that, if you want to bypass that all of the cloud functionality, you can create a project in AI Pro, the desktop app here, and I'm simply scaling, drawing an area here. And another big tip for when you draw areas, it's really important that you draw the area on the inside of the building, because when you're calculating like the square meterage and stuff like that, if you do it on the outside where you're never going to be surveying, that could affect your total area square meters of what you're trying to capture. So yeah, create a project, scaled it, drew my area, saved it to the hard drive of my Sidekick. Then I go to the survey app, connect my Sidekick to. You have options for all projects, the Ekahau Cloud, Ekahau Sidekick. I connect it, go to Ekahau Sidekick, and I see the project file here, and then I'm ready to start capturing my survey data. So I do a quick walk around of my my apartment. I'm sure you're all desperate to know how good the Wi-Fi is here. As I walk around, finish my survey, capture all that data that I wanted to collect. Troy mentioned this earlier. I love taking pictures of the environment. So here's my access point right above me over there right now. Capture that data, happy with that. Then I can just hit back, it syncs and saves the file back to the hard drive of the Sidekick 2. I then connect the Sidekick to my AI Pro laptop, and I can then transfer the file again from the hard drive of the Sidekick back to the laptop, and I can review the data here. So you can completely bypass and not have to use any of the cloud functionality if you want to, and you can use the hard drive of the Sidekick, and you can collect data about your environment, no problem at all. Troy.
And so we've seen a trend across the industry as there's larger teams that are rolling out Wi-Fi solutions for various organizations, whether that's an internal team within your own company or you're part of a professional services organization, right? We find in those larger groups where we have clusters of people working on a wireless Wi-Fi related team where it's not just one person tasked with doing everything, that you'll have on those larger teams, some people will be your Wi-Fi gurus. They're the experts in Wi-Fi design, analysis, troubleshooting. They're the full suite. But you may have other resources that you send across the country, right? So these are the ones going to a lot of remote sites. They're doing data collection. They don't have necessarily the full-on wireless expertise that the experts back in the corporate office do, but they're just out there collecting data, right? And for those collecting data, they don't need to do full-on Wi-Fi designs. They're not doing a whole bunch of in-depth, super detailed heat map analysis of what's happening in your Wi-Fi networks. They just need the capability to go on site with their Sidekick 2 and collect that data. And that's what the Measure Pro licensing approach helps those larger teams achieve, is that we can buy the products that the experts back at corporate office need, and we can also buy the minimum hardware and equipment that's required for people to go out into the field, collect that data, validate that they've collected enough data that they can actually leave site. They don't have to return and revisit that stuff, make sure everything was working and being collected as expected. And then move on to the next location. And this provides a much more affordable model for a team of Wi-Fi consultants or a team of Wi-Fi people within a organization, a private organization, to work and collaborate on Wi-Fi and find that sweet spot for what products that they need to deliver on a complete Wi-Fi solution.
So, Stu, Dale, whilst you come back to fire over some of those great questions we've had in the Q&A, I'm just going to leave the QR code to sign up for our next webinar, which is going to be on November 20th, where we'll be covering all things related to wireless network design. And I was very particular not to say Wi-Fi. We are going to focus on more technologies other than Wi-Fi in this next webinar. So private cellular, Bluetooth, Zigbee, ultra wideband, as well as Wi-Fi. So yeah, if you're around on November 20th and would like to join us, please do get yourselves signed up. And Dale, why don't you fire over the first question from the Q&A?
Sure, sure. Here's a question from Brian. So he said he still likes to do things the old way, where he keeps his design projects and his projects with measured data in separate files, separate project files. Is this still recommended, he asked? And can we have the design and survey projects be part of the same files? So yeah, predictive designs and validation surveys is part of the same project.
Great question. And Brian, I would say it comes down to personal preference. If you want to keep it separate, you can, but maybe we can just make you aware of a kind of like new approach that you can take to redesigning Wi-Fi networks. So if you do a survey of an environment that has a existing Wi-Fi network, you can actually push that to Ekahau AI Pro Online, and you can use that measured survey data without having to draw any kind of walls or any kind of obstacles. We use AI and ML with your survey data that's been collected and combining looking at the floor plan to build an RF model of your environment. And then you can account for making changes like swapping out the access points. If you want to do like a rip and replace scenario, go from 2.4 and 5 only access points to APs that support 6 gigahertz, maybe Wi-Fi 7. See if you can keep those existing locations, or maybe you need to add one or two here, or maybe you've got a network that you just want to make a couple of little minor tweaks to, and then you can move them to different locations. So you can leverage the power of collected survey data to do a new design or redesign of of an existing network. So it's completely personal preference. If you'd like to keep things separate, you can, or you can combine it, and then you can see the survey data and use it for a design. So yeah, great question. And Stu, I'll let you ask the next one for Troy.
Yes, this is a good one. So Troy, sometimes you have tables and chairs while walking around in a room or offices, and you can't really walk straight. And does it make any difference in terms of collecting the data points?
Yeah, so a couple of approaches, and it depends how the tables and chairs are laid out. One approach you could take is Matt described this as he was talking about continuous surveys. If I walk up to a chair or a table that's blocking my path, and it's probably easier with a chair, I can pause my continuous survey and I can tuck that chair back in the table. And once I've moved that chair out of my walking path, when I'm ready to resume walking, I just click again where I was standing and I can keep walking along. Right. And so I can keep repeating that process as chairs are blocking my path. If there is a chair in my way and I had to walk around the chair, I would want to make sure that I capture that change in direction in my continuous path. Right. So for continuous, I would click as I walked around that chair. One of the benefits of leveraging Autopilot is it would automatically take care of that deviation for you within the software itself. But it does matter depending how far that chair was kicked out. You know, if it was off by or blocking your path by a meter or two, that could really affect the data that you're looking at. Always being mindful that you want to make sure that you're collecting data points within 6 meters of each other as a best practice.
Great.
Dale,
Thank you.
do you have another question lined up?
Yeah, and you might have covered this. I know we've covered this in previous webinars, but a question asks, how does the survey, when you conduct a survey and bring in an AI Pro online, how can that help with network migration?
Oh yeah, so yeah, great question. Touched on it a little bit earlier with Brian's question. So when you've got survey data collected and you push that into Ekahau AI Pro Online, we can look at the survey data that's been collected. We use AI and machine learning and also the survey paths and the data that's been collected to build an RF model digital twin of your environment. So if you've surveyed a legacy or a aging network that is only capable of doing 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, you can actually select all of those access points and then go and select a different, completely target new model access point. So you can go from vendor X that only does 2.4 and 5 to vendor Y that supports 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. And then you will see it automatically swap the AP positions on the map, and you'll see that even 6 gigahertz predicted coverage based on that survey data that you've collected. So it's really good for simulating those network upgrades. And if you wanted to try and keep some of those existing locations, or maybe you need to tweak a few things here or there, or add in a couple of extra access points to maybe sort out some of your capacity needs if you've got a really dense environment. So it's a really nice, fast way of doing network upgrades and simulations based off survey data without having to draw lots of walls and do manual attenuation calculations of your materials.
Thank you.
I wish you would talk about editing a walking path. Okay. Your wish is my command. Or you can edit a walking path in both the AI Pro desktop application and the survey path. And Troy is probably gonna give me a little slap after this, because he said yesterday when we was going through the slides, he's like, oh, should we include how to edit walking paths in the webinar deck? And I was like, oh yeah, we should probably. And then I just forgot to put it in there, and I thought maybe we are going to run out of time. So yes, totally my fault. Okay, so let's see if we can do this live. That's the
Well, I
one.
love it when we do live demos. This is
Yeah,
great.
so I'm just going to fire up my Ekahau. So whilst this is loading, I'm just going to let me try open this one.
and thank you for all that those that asked questions today. We had a really high number of Q&A and lots of activity in the chat, so thank you very much.
Yeah, I love seeing all of the questions in the chat and the Q&A and the reactions. So thank you for that. So if I zoom in and we look at the survey path, where we have one of the little dots here, if I was to right click, you can see I can move the survey point and now it has the white square. So maybe that this wasn't the exact location. I could then move it to a different position. So if you tap in the wrong location or autopilot puts you in the wrong position or stop you taps in the wrong position on stop and go, you can do it in the desktop application, but you need to do it by looking for the circle. If I right click on where this triangle or like the straight line is, it doesn't do anything. But when I right click here, I can delete the survey point or I can move the survey point to a different location. And then maybe like I can show you another position here, for example. Again, I could move the survey point to the right position if I did tap in the wrong location. Let me see if I can. I'm going to try now to show you how you do it in the survey app. 1 second.
And that's a great lead in because that was the next question asked.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see my screen?
You got it. Yep.
Okay, so here's my survey path from the survey application, and it's a little bit different. So the way that you do this in the survey app is you come back to your survey tab in the top left-hand corner, and you press and hold on the survey path. So now you can see that the red X has come up, and it's going to basically that would delete my survey, my complete survey path that I did. But if I want to move the position, I press and hold on the point and then I move it to a different location. So if I wanted to, maybe I in my ensuite, I didn't get to there, I can press and hold and then I can move slightly further and then release. And then once I am happy with that, don't click on the big red X because that will delete the survey path completely. Click on the top right hand corner where it says exit and then it exits out of it for you. So yeah, that's how you can do it in AI Pro Desktop and in the survey application.
Matt emphasized that do not click on that big red X, otherwise that'll delete a lot of your survey paths. So just be very cautious about that.
Yeah. I know we're like 15 minutes over, but Stu, let's take one more question and then we can call it a day for
you know what, I just answered it live.
Okay.
But you know what? One of them was, is there a way to overlay a Just Go survey with a real floor plan? And the answer is yes, you can. You can do it as long as you've surveyed with the Just Go properly as the outer edge of the building, and inner outer edge of the actual building. And you've got that laid out. You can superimpose a real floor plan on top of that later in AI Pro Desktop today. Not on the online yet, but on desktop today, you can do it.
Yeah. We have got big plans for the Just Go survey mode that's going to be coming in the near future. So that might be one of the things that we look at integrating because like Stu said, you can do it now, but it's a bit of a manual and it's a little bit of a tricky process, I would say, just being honest. So if we can just to share with you all, like the next kind of like steps for the Just Go is we want to be able to stop and pause your survey, also generate a more professional looking floor plan. So it's not kind of that sketched outline. We believe now we'll be able to present you with a more kind of like floor plan you'd expect to see from a floor plan you get provided by an architect or whatever. We could think we can get a bit closer with that. And also, yeah, being able to do that kind of automatic overlay and things like that with the floor plan, that'd be a really nice additional feature. So something we'll definitely make a note of and speak with our product team. But thank you all so much for staying with us. It's so nice to see so many of you stayed on extra. I know we did warn you ahead of time that we probably were going to run a bit long today, but yeah, I think we just got a little bit overexcited, Troy, when we were putting the content together. We had so much good stuff we wanted to share with you, and I was like, I don't want to take any of it out. So hopefully you found it beneficial today and picks up a few tips and tricks for your next Wi-Fi survey that you've got coming up. And please do feel free to share it with us. We have a public Slack group. We have a user voice, right, Stu? I know you wanted to mention that as well, right, with people, so you can chat with us in many various different ways on the chat here, on our Slack channels, on LinkedIn. You can find us as well. And obviously at all different events around the world, like Troy at Wyco. do you see today?
Yeah, we
Or
want to hear from everybody that we can. So thoughts, feedbacks, directions they want to take a product, interesting scenarios that they've experienced and that they've had to use, you know, a Wi-Fi measuring tool for. We want to hear all about that and hear from you all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and check us out at some of the next events coming up. I know we've got a booth in Cisco Live Melbourne, so go check us out there. We've got our team is out there going to be, so if you got some feedback there as well. But yes, put that feedback in into our Slack channel, and we also have a user voice forum, which is ekahau.uservoice.com, and that also upvote those features that you see in there, and then I'm going to get those forwarded off to the product team. So the more upvotes you get, that supports the case to getting a feature implemented.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for your time today and joining us on this webinar. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one in a couple of weeks. Bye, everybody.